Hey guys, how's it going? I'm the Duke of Italy, your favorite lo-fi music YouTuber, and today, back to my roots a little bit. We're finally talking about some black metal, but not just any black metal, some blackened death metal, and some stuff that I wasn't sure if I was going to expect this on this chart, but we've reached the point on the death metal chart where we were finally talking about blackened death metal. This is a bit more of my expertise, but we're also covering a few little lanes of this genre. It actually covers more topics than you would expect. It's really a bit more expansive than you would imagine, really. Blackened death metal has various degrees of routes, and I have to say, a good variety is covered and a good amount of quality is covered as well. Too many blackened death metal bands really just don't carry a torch. Behemoth's later stuff is middling and really doesn't do as well as it likes to. Dark Tranquility, I've never really been a huge fan of. Skeleton Witch are fine, but truly good blackened death metal is kind of hard to come by, and of course this goes in many different routes. So we're going to cover a solid 8 albums today, and we'll see if they're any good. And I have to say, honestly, the selection we have here is rather satisfactory. We start with a band called Order from Chaos with their album Stillbirth Machine. Coming in at a very reasonable 35 minutes, we have a lot of black metal types that I really like. Short album length, gravelly guitar tone, a really evil attitude to the whole thing. It also sounds just crazy. The low fidelity gives it a whole breath of fresh air where this genre could have easily flopped. There's also a really nice use of these really jagged sounding upstrokes on the guitar. It gives me sort of a Norwegian flair to the whole thing. The latter third of this album is a lot more like actual war metal, which is its real strength. It gets more primitive and interesting. But the main problem with this whole thing is there's not a lot of substantive songwriting. It kind of falls flat in a couple places, feels a bit gimmicky. It reminds me a lot of first wave black metal. So if you're into sort of raw, extreme thrash metal, then this is definitely your speed. But I find it good, but the faults are definitely pretty clear. It could be going farther with its sort of genre conventions, or really any conventions, or lack of conventions. And up next we have a band called Impetuous Ritual with, and let me get this title right, Relentless Execution of Ceremonial Execs... I don't know, it starts with an E, but this one's pretty cool, which you're basically getting a 36-minute long dosage of a Portal album here. And Portal is fantastic, so we're off to a good start, just from a very general sort of bad take. You get an absolutely massive serving of death doom on this whole thing, which makes it extreme, heavy, really creepy overall. It gives it such a unique vibe to the whole thing. It sounds totally cavernous. It has this sort of war metal or even death grind sort of surging structure to the whole thing, and this really primitive structure that carries it with a sort of ferocity. Due to this album being made in the last 20 years, the modern production gives it a serious boost. They really learned how to make black metal sound as heavy as possible. It sounds very bassy overall, which gives it a real sense of darkness and power more than anything else. Maybe my favorite track on here is The Closer, which is just a funeral dirge. It sounds as heavy as humanly possible. This album overall is very atmospheric, which is where a lot of death metal doesn't really do a lot of, at least back then. And once we've gotten to the modern era where they weren't afraid to show off a little bit of black metal, show a little bit of theatrics, the atmosphere kind of came through, which is where black metal lies. Black metal lies in its atmosphere. So I think this album's pretty great. It does exactly what it says on the album cover. That thing's really gross. But it's creepy. It's not fun, but it's good. It's really good, actually. It's actually, like I said before, it's great. And up next with the impossible titles, we have Mitochondrion with Archaon. Similar riffy blast of an album. So the name of the game with this album is dynamics. It sounds simply awesome due to the sheer brevity of this whole thing. What they do with it is great. You've got these awesome, really distorted vocals that are also a really interesting touch. It reminds me a lot of early extreme metal with these really primitive tremolo riffs going for them. Not very melodic at all, just gross and distorted. And dissonant, that's a very important part. This is one of those albums that I would compare to something kind of like Gentle Giant, if you will, early Gentle Giant, having your sort of avant-garde technicality that leads to a unique atmosphere. While Gentle Giant had the medieval spiel going on, this thing is technical and leads to something totally twisted and dark. It's so jagged, it's so non-groovy, despite it being so energetic and surging that it feels just so intrinsically evil. This album even comes across as occasionally gorgeous. You get these little bits of melodicism that actually sound quite fantastic. And there is so much snare on this thing, not just in the mixing sense, but the fact that there are plenty of blast beats, plenty of snare rolls, and also many rhythms that they incorporate extra snare pops here and there. It kind of reminds me of some screamo bands like Orchid. And above else, and above anything else in the whole world, this thing has riffs. So thank you for the riffs. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten. And up next, you've all been waiting for it. It's Portal with Outra. I don't know. It's 36 minutes of some of the best Blackened death metal you'll ever hear, and it is so specifically atmospheric and disgusting. If you like the disgusting lyrics of death metal and you want to feel how disgusting they are, Portal is your band. They are one of the most engaging, hypnotic, and just disturbing bands I can think of. Really excellent. And don't come in my comments like, oh, but what about Gnaw Their Tongues? What about this? What about blah, 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 blah. Portal has a execution to them, a level of consistency that makes their atmosphere unparalleled. Sure, Gnaw Their Tongues has occasionally reached the most disturbing music of all time. Portal, overall, across all their albums, doesn't have a lot of bad material, and therefore it's the creepy factor is more pervasive, because you guys maybe not think of this very much, but like, you don't only need riffs on your album. You need sort of a production style, a sense of songwriting. You know, you could have the best riff of all time. If you don't know what to do with it, then you're lost. Like, you could think of Yesu Dod by Burzum, and even though that's the best riff of all time, there's one other riff in there. It's got a crazy intro and lo-fi production. That carries a song. If it was just the riff, let's say on like an acoustic guitar, then no one would really care. Things matter more than just the riff. But this album absolutely has riffs. Some of the most dissonant, crazy riffs you'll ever hear, but they're incorporated in such a way that has a pervasive atmosphere. It has a sense of looming and ever-bearing darkness. And the coolest thing is, the second half of this album can even forego the riffs at points for harsh noise and dark ambience, really weird elements that death metal is not known for. It is just filth. The production is totally cavernous. The riffs move very slowly despite playing tremolo. In terms of the sort of dissonant black metal sound, it is absolutely top shelf. It wipes the other competition. And what's really cool is this album feels particularly fresh. The first half of the album is very much blackened death metal, yet it has such a twisted, gross atmosphere to the whole thing. But the second half, or the B-side really, other than the harsh noise interlude, feels like ritualistic. It's like sometimes it'll just use sheer songwriting force to incorporate more simplistic or more basic riffing to just carry just such a pervasive atmosphere. This is the most atmospheric album on probably this entire chart, all 90 plus albums here, but it's also one of the best. It is absolutely fantastically great, something that cannot be overstated. And up next, we're covering something totally different, which is Bolzer's Aura EP, which is just a quick little 23 minutes. And this is a band that is so good, I didn't even notice that it's just two people. Fast-paced and riffy. This is very riffy blackened death metal, and also rather modern and pretty clean production, something you don't expect that much, but it is hazy, cloudy, and evil production. The tremolo riffs are everywhere. So while this isn't sort of like grind, or it's not more on the war metal side, and it's not that atmospheric, it is strictly death metal production with deep, heavy, chugged riffs with more black metal melodicism. It is what it says on the tin, and there's not much else I could say about it except for the fact that it just does it so extremely well. This is an album that is not boring at all. Despite a little bit of ritualistic sense to it, there aren't that many songs here, so they actually span pretty long. It's just high quality riffage. Everything on the tin goes as it's supposed to, and it's supposed to be great, and it is great. This thing is great. It's 23 minutes of high energy, high octane, ritualistic, dark, evil ambience. It's a perfect blend of everything you really like in your black metal, and it just so happens to be black and death metal at the same time. And up next, we have Blasphemy's Fallen Angel of Doom. I know why it's here. I don't need to tell you why it's here, because you should know why this is here. And quite frankly, I don't feel inclined to really tell you why it's here. This thing invented war metal, and it is as fantastic as people say. It is one of the harshest things you'll have to listen to in terms of metal. It's just, the production's just so bad. so low fidelity. But this is spawned a whole movement. It came out before second wave black metal, mind you. This thing predates Norwegian black metal, except for Mayhem. But this thing is just crazy. So heavy, quick riffs. There's a reason this band has 2 albums. One of them, like, no one even thinks about, and this band just seems to not stop being popular. It's because they just executed it so perfectly. This thing's so stupidly evil. I'm gonna stop talking about it. It's great. Go listen to Blasphemy. You know, we're talking about war. War metal is the only thing that matters. War metal is honestly the future. So listen to this because it's as past as it gets. It's like one of the oldest, like it's definitely the oldest full-length album. Their demo is the oldest war metal anything, not including like proto bands like Sarcophago, but Blasphemy is the turning point. So listen to Blasphemy. And up next is Necrophobic with the Nocturnal Silence. It's a pretty clear blend of primitive sort of black metal riffs and these more grounded, sort of heavy, almost chunky riffs. Basically what you'd expect from black and death metal, respectively. It's seemingly about 70% black metal with these more really heavy, almost breakdown-esque moments, sort of stuff like, I guess, Infestor breakdown style, but not like Cryptopsy or Suffocation breakdown style. There's some more death metal style galloping riffs here, which actually kind of remind me of Immortal's thrash metal era. And I really like how there's like this spooky organ to tie together a few of these songs. It sounds really cool. It's really interesting how it uses more of a technical melodic riffing style to generate this atmosphere. I think it works great. It is done very well. The riffs really carry it into something really interesting. It's just sort of a display of fantastic riffs overall. At the end of the day, it's probably like the most important thing about metal. It's just the other things seem to fall in place. And the last album for today is by a band called Imprecation with, and I'm going to try and pronounce this, Theurgia Goetia Summa. I don't know Latin. I don't know what language that is, but it doesn't really matter because we're going to talk about this album either way. So first of all, right off the bat, it sounds great, good, sort of ideal fidelity for this type of metal, but it's really spooky and has this cool sense of synthesizers, and the overlaying sense of doom is extremely pervasive, which is something that isn't always found in this genre. You know, we saw it today a little bit with Mitochondrion and Portal, but here we are again with a sort of different take on this because this comes pretty early. There's a really cool, heavy sense of contrast where you get these occasional really blasty war metal sections that are totally different from some little bits of melodicism here and there. I love the vocals here. They're very heavy and growling. They're like a template for everything modern that isn't too overly produced. This thing is actually a compilation of EPs and demos, but funnily enough, it actually feels really consistent, which is strange because that doesn't always happen. I mean, most bands feel too different, but other than the fact that it feels very consistent, it's all very good. It doesn't feel like they're repeating the same thing too much. There are some sort of black metal-esque riffages in here, but it's really this sort of really dark and twisted harmonies that they lay in that are so unforgiving. They're actually rather simple, even a bit chuggy. But if there's anything to carry the atmosphere over the edge here, it's that, which I find super interesting. I think this album is really great for sort of a more twisted riff reason than some of the other albums here today, but I think it's really cool. And that's actually all I have for you guys today. That's all the sort of war and black and death metal albums I'm going to explain for you guys today. But since I barely said anything, I guess I'll mention Primitive Warfare is a band that just made a new album. If you guys are into the new war metal grind scene we're covering, because next episode we're going to talk about death grind and grindcore and gore grind, just a little bit, just enough to dip your toes in. But Primitive Warfare, you know, if you want a blend of these things, doesn't really feel like death metal anymore, but it feels good. And by good, I mean absolutely horrible. This album makes me feel bad. But if you guys like this video, I'd appreciate a like and subscribe. Any comments, questions, or concerns, go ahead, put that down in the comment section below. My social media is in the description, my Instagram, my Twitter, and as well as my Discord page. My Discord page is awesome. Lots of homies on there talking about music and Blade and sometimes metal. Whole lot of Deftones. Honestly, we talk about Deftones a lot. Jen made this thumbnail. Jen's social media, whatever I included, I totally forgot what it is. Not that it even matters to me anymore, but it's there. Give them money. Give Jen some money. And, well, shoot. That's about it. Hope you guys have a good day. Bye.